Well, the reading won't come first this morning because we're going to, teleport or something. We were in Exodus 20 last week, and we are going all the way to Leviticus 10 today. It's a long jump forward. So I'm going to kind of summarize what happens in between. After we get the 10 sayings, the Decalogue, or what we call the 10 Commandments, Moses is going to go up on the mountain, and he's going to get 42 more laws. There are eventually going to be 613 in total in all of Torah, but it comes in the 10, the 42, and then the rest. And we've been saying that numbers mean things. And man, now we've got a number, 42. 42. What do y'all think of when you hear the number 42? I guess no Douglas Adams fans. 42 is the answer to everything. Anybody? Nobody? Tough crowd this morning. 42. What do we do with 42? Any ideas? Any ideas what to do with 42? Now we have the numbers that we have been dealing with. What are the numbers we have been dealing with that have significance? 7, 12, 10. And 10, my understanding is 10 is really a thing because it's 7 plus 3. So 10 is made up of 7 and 3. And 3 was community, like human community. And this kind of comes from like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And there's lots of pairs of 3 that you could get of the forefathers. So there's Abraham, Moses, and Elijah is another big 3 that you could get. So 3 is kind of the number of human community. 7 is God's new creation. 7 is the number of creation or divine completeness. You put them together and you get 10, the whole community, God's whole community is kind of how that works. So you can take numbers and put them together in ways to get other numbers. And we've had, times 10, so you end up with 1,000. It's 10 times 10 times 10. So with that in mind, those numbers, 42, what can you do with 42? Let me give you one of our numbers, 7. What can you do with 7 and 42?
My man is gone this morning.
6 times 7 is 42. That's interesting, isn't it? Now, somebody had mentioned 6 a while ago, and I think it was in the context of the ketubah. You could have 6 in your ketubah, and I was like, oh no, you wouldn't have 6. What does 6 mean?
God created heaven and earth, all everything.
Well, he worked for 6 days. But we say 7 because 7 is the number we put there. We say the heavens and the earth were created in 7 days. Even though he rested on the last one, it was still part of what we call that. And 6 ends up being 1 short. And so 6 ends up being the number of humanity in a way. But in this way where it's like you're short of the 7. So Goliath, when he shows up, we got a while before we get to him, but he's going to be described with all these numbers, how heavy his spear is, and how many fingers and toes he has, if I'm not mistaken. And the number that's going to keep showing up is 6. Goliath is 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Mark of the beast. 6, 6, 6. 6 is short. But you put 6 and 7 together and you get this number of commandments. Now, it might seem like we're kind of stretching here. 6 times 7. Does it really work that way? And do they even really think are they going to take this number and say, what can I do with that? With math. And we think of math in this abstract way, right? 6 times 7 is 42. And I don't think they thought that way, not in an abstract way. They're not going to write 6 times 7 down on paper, but they understood multiplication, and they understood division. And why would they understand that? Because if you're making dinner and you're like, I need 2 rolls for each person in my family, and I got 5 people in my family, how many rolls am I going to make? 10. And so they think of this in terms of like sets of. It's like 5 sets of 2. It's not 5 times 2 equals 10. That's the way we think, because we went to school and they taught us how to write numbers on paper. We think of 5 times 2. But they would have thought of, I got to get rolls for everyone, 2 rolls per person, 5 people, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2 makes 10. Or you could put it another way around. If somebody goes out and they catch 8 fish, and you got to divide it up between 4 people, how many fish does each person get? 2. 2, 2, 2, 2. So that's how all people, really, before you had abstract math, are going to think of numbers this way. And so it's not 6 times 7. It's either 6 groups of 7 each, or 7 groups of 6 each. And so that's how we get the thing. But the point is, you have combined the number of a new creation, divine completeness, with what's short of that, the human number, us falling short. You put those 2 together and you get the 42 laws. Which is interesting, because the other part of the rest of Exodus is going to be about making the tabernacle. It is 10:11. So, what is the tabernacle? The tabernacle is going to be the place where God dwells. Literally, His presence is going to come and fill it. And I heard, it was on the Bible Project that I heard the saying, we have this idea that sin cannot be in the presence of God. Sin can't get into heaven. I've heard it. God can't be around sin. The tabernacle is God coming and putting His presence in the sin. Right in the camp. And there's plenty of sin in that camp. God comes and He puts 6 and 7 are going together. You see, the divine completeness is going to come and it's going to dwell among humans. That's what the tabernacle is. It's God's perfection coming down and being with us. And then when we start Leviticus is about the priesthood, right? The Levites. They're going to have the duties. In Leviticus, they're going to tell us what those duties are. And the tabernacle is going to be ordained. I believe that happens at the end of Exodus, if I'm not mistaken. You got the special oil they're going to put on it. That is in Exodus. And then Leviticus is going to be about, here are the things that the priests have to do in the tabernacle. They got certain sacrifices they got to make. This is the way it's got to be done. And then they have this 7-day ordination kind of the priests doing their thing in the tabernacle, offering the sacrifices. And it's Aaron and it's his sons. And he has 4 sons. And that all kind of finishes out. They finish the 7 days. And that brings us to Leviticus 10. And did we have anybody who wants to read? Any readers this morning? All right. I will read for us. And we're going to do the whole chapter. Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense. And they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to His command. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Moses then said to Aaron, this is what the Lord spoke of when He said, among those who approach me, I will show myself holy. In the sight of all the people, I will be honored. Aaron remained silent. Moses summoned Mishael and Elzaphan, the sons of Aaron's uncle Uzziel, and said to them, come here, carry your cousins outside the camp, away from the front of the sanctuary. So they came and carried them, still in their tunics, outside the camp, as Moses ordered. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons Eleazar and Ithamar, this is the 2 that are left, Do not let your hair become unkempt, and do not tear your clothes, or you will die, and the Lord will be angry with the whole community. But your relatives, all the house of Israel, may mourn for those the Lord has destroyed by fire. Do not leave the entrance to the tent of meeting, or you will die, because the Lord's anointing oil is on you. So they did as Moses said. Then the Lord said to Aaron, you and your sons are not to drink wine or other fermented drink whenever you go into the tent of meeting, or you will die. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. You must distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. And you must teach the Israelites all the decrees the Lord has given them through Moses. And Moses said to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, take the grain offering left over from the offering made to the Lord by fire, and eat it, prepared without yeast beside the altar, for it is most holy. Eat it in a holy place, because it is your share and your son's share of the offerings made to the Lord by fire. For so I have been commanded. But you and your sons and your daughters may eat the breast that was waved and the thigh that was presented. Eat them in a ceremonial clean place. They have been given to you and your children as your share of the Israelites' fellowship offerings. The thigh that was presented and the breast that was waved must be brought with the fat portions of the offerings made by fire to be waved before the Lord as a wave offering. This will be the regular share for you and your children as the Lord has commanded. When Moses inquired about the goat of the sin offering and found that it had been burned up, he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons, and asked, why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? It is most holy. It was given to you to take away the guilt of the community by making atonement for them before the Lord. Since its blood was not taken into the holy place, you should have eaten the goat in the sanctuary area, as I commanded. Aaron replied to Moses, today they sacrifice their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord. But such things as this have happened to me. Would the Lord have been pleased if I had eaten the sin offering today? When Moses heard this, he was satisfied. All right, a lot going on in this chapter. We skipped a lot. Let's be honest, part of that is because there's a lot of description about the tabernacle. And if you've read it before, you can kind of get lost into it. Maybe, has anybody ever fallen asleep reading that? Anybody want to confess they've fallen asleep reading that? I don't know if I've ever... Or mine wandered away. Yeah, that certainly happened to me. And now this is certainly, like, you don't fall asleep during this one. I mean, maybe there's that little part there about, like verses 12 through 18, somewhere around there. Maybe you wandered off a little bit there. But there's stuff happening in this chapter. And that's part of why we've skipped here. But it's also as a place for us to anchor, to summarize what's happened before, see what God is doing here. And there's another reason for stopping here. Because we've been looking at God through this lens of a merciful God. And that's been one of the points that we're making, is that you've heard it said that the God of the Old Testament is a God of anger and judgment and holiness, and the God of the New Testament is a God of mercy and grace. And we've been saying, no, that's the same God. The God of the Old Testament is a God of mercy and grace. It's not just in the New Testament that happens, but this God seems like it might be a God of fire. And so we want to look at it. And so with that, now I get to ask a question. It's a long time. It took us 18 minutes. We got to the question, what do you see in this chapter? What jumps out at you? What questions do you have?
I'm going against what God says for sure.
I mean, you certainly, yeah, I mean, that's got to be the thing. It jumps out like fire coming out at you, doesn't it? No, when God says to do things this way, you better do it that way. And that's exactly the sentiment that Moses has. Among those who approach me, I will show myself holy. In the sight of all the people, I will be honored. You can't be doing this thing that I said not to do. And it's really, I guess it is kind of both. It's more that God prescribed a way to do it, and exactly how to do it, right? And they didn't do it that way. That's the problem here. The first 7 chapters, really, are the prescription of what exactly they're supposed to do. And they didn't do it this way. The fire is supposed to come from a certain place, if I recollect correctly. And they have not gotten it from there. But also, my understanding is this was a job that was given to Aaron, specifically, and not necessarily to his sons. And so they've kind of crossed up twice. And maybe, I don't know if it actually says not to do this, but it certainly told them how to do it the right way. And they haven't done it. Okay? Anything else? Jump.
Aaron, he didn't say a word.
Aaron remained silent. I mean, this thing is dripping with tension. Right? His sons have just been destroyed. They've just been killed by God. And you can just imagine how that makes him feel. And Moses' response is sort of something like, I told you so. What Moses says is not helping here. Or maybe it's not so much I told you so as maybe like serves him right. And Aaron remains silent.
Does he maybe feel some blame if the job was given to him and he allowed his sons to do it?
Maybe. I mean, we're going to get to. So what has happened? Like, why did they do this? Like, what? Why are we to gather? Like, did they just not understand? I mean, that's a good question. Like, are they doing this because, well, Dad didn't do it, and so like we know it's supposed to be done, so maybe we should go do it. And that almost sounds like it reminds me of another story, because there's somebody that they're carrying the ark along. Actually, no, they're not carrying the ark. They're supposed to be carrying the ark, but the ark is on a cart that's being pulled by oxen, and it's getting ready to fall over, and somebody steps up. They're like, I see what needs to be done. The ark needs to be protected, and he touches it to keep it from falling, and he gets struck down. And so you might be tempted to see kind of the same thing in this story, like, well, maybe Dad isn't doing the thing that's supposed to be done, and maybe we need to step up and do it, and maybe they just make a mistake when they're doing that. But the thing is, we get a big hint in here, a clue that's probably not what's going on. And what is that clue that we find out? What does God say after this? Well, you heard what Moses said. It happens, and Moses says, God's going to be shown holy. God is going to be honored. What does God say about this? God says, don't be drinking on the job. And what does that tell you about what Nadab and Abihu were doing? They were drinking on the job. And so it doesn't seem like they were really paying attention, really trying to make sure things got done the right way, because they're intoxicated.
And they're going to do it the easiest way they can.
And yeah, I mean, if they're intoxicated,
Let's just get it done.
yeah. So let's go back to this thing. It says they offered unauthorized fire. What does unauthorized mean? Well, unauthorized would mean like you're supposed to use this fire, and God didn't say you could use this fire, and they used this other fire. Anybody remember the older translations? Pretty sure what the King James says. Probably heard this said a different way. They brought, I remember the word, strange fire. And it turns out that the King James is a much better translation here, because the word actually means strange or stranger. It literally means someone a foreigner who has come and you don't know this person. Like if somebody walked in that door and no one here had ever seen them in their life, we would say, that's a stranger. That's what that word means. It says they brought strange fire. Now, isn't that a weird way to talk about this fire? And it turns out, so when you get a word like that, what have we been doing? Like when we get this word that's like, that's a weird word, or that word's not used very often, we go back and we see where it's been used before. Now I'm going to leave this as a task for you. So, one, how do you find out? How do you find out what really this word is? If you wanted to do it, how are you going to do it?
Compare it to where it's been used before in circumstances.
Right, but how are you going to do that? I want to give you the tools to be able to do this. How are you going to do this? Okay.
Everywhere that strange is used.
And I think there's some Bibles. I think I had a Bible at one time that had a pretty large. It wasn't an exhaustive concordance, but it had a large concordance. I think it's a keyword study Bible. I'll give you another tool. So Blue Letter Bible. You can put that into a search engine and find it. So Strong's concordance. He actually went through and had all of the words and gave them a number. And they all have a number. And then you can reference everywhere that word with the number is used. And Blue Letter Bible will actually show you all of the ways it was translated. So that starts to give you a pretty good idea of what these words mean. And then it will also give you all of the occurrences in order. So Blue Letter Bible is great for that. Okay, so you can start with the verse. I usually start, I have a Hebrew English interlinear, and it has all of the words with their numbers. And so I'll get the word, look up the number. And it turns out that this word's going to be used 3 times. It's used bang, bang, bang in Exodus. And it's in the ordination of the priest. And it's very interesting. And you trust me, God is tying this back to those 3 things. That's what he's doing when he uses a word this way. And so many times we've seen he's picked out this strange word. It doesn't really go here. That's not how you would describe fire that you weren't supposed to use. Fire that you weren't supposed to use is not a stranger. Okay, but that's the word God has chosen to use here. And he's doing it to tie it back to where that word has been used before. And it's used in the ordination of the priest. I think it's once in Exodus 29, and I'm pretty sure twice in 30. Maybe it's 29, 30, 31. You can go find it. You can use Blue Letter Bible to go and find where it's used, and you will start to see this pattern of what God is trying to tell us by using this word. And part of it is there's a certain anointing oil that they make. It gives you the recipe for these ingredients. And it tells you, don't you make this oil, don't be putting it on any stranger. You don't just do anything with this oil that we're making. It's used to anoint the priest, and I'm pretty sure it's used to anoint the tabernacle as well. Don't be putting it on any stranger. But they have brought strange fire before the Lord. All right, that was a big aside. What else do we see here? We found out really why this happened. Anybody have anything else that jumps out?
I think that Aaron and his family wasn't supposed to show their grief.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a big part of this. Like, at least Moses jumps on this. So what's the normal thing that would happen? Is Aaron would start to show his grief, but he would do it in a specific way. I mean, there's the immediate reaction that might happen, right? But there's a process that they go through for mourning. And we saw like a grand version of that with Jacob. When Joseph goes to bury his father, and there's this huge procession, and there's mourning and all these things happen. And we see some of the specific things. Do not let your hair become unkempt. Do not tear your clothes. These are things that they would do to show their mourning. And that's not necessary. I mean, maybe that's an immediate reaction, but I think it's more of the things they do to show their grief. And Moses is like, no, don't you dare do that. The rest of Israel could do that. He says actually, your relatives, and then he says all of Israel can mourn for these, but you can't. Why can't Aaron and his other 2 sons? Why are they the only ones in all of Israel that can't mourn for them?
Maybe because they were to blame for what happened.
I don't know if they're to blame. I tell you what I see. I see like, what are they doing right now? What is happening when this happens? One of the offerings that's supposed to take place. And who's got to do the offerings? Aaron and his sons. They're on duty doing this job that they have to do on behalf of the rest of Israel. And it's got to be done in a certain way. Haven't we seen that? Like, it has to be done in this certain way. Like, you've got to put on these. Exodus is going to go into great detail about these garments that they're wearing, exactly how they look, and they are something. Let me tell you, these garments that they're wearing. And it says here, and Moses like, don't you tear your clothes. you know what we went through to make those clothes that you're wearing? You better not tear them. They have a job to do. They're on duty. And they've got to do it. And we've seen what happens if you don't do it right. We've just seen that. Moses is like, whoa, you better finish your job. And that's really what the rest of the chapter is about. They have to finish their job. Everyone else can mourn, but they can't. Something that strikes me about it is the way this language works. And I saw it's in the Garden of Eden too. I always thought of that story as like Adam and Eve sin, and they come down, and God's really angry, and he curses them. Starts with Adam, and then Eve, and then the snake, and the ground is cursed. But really the way it reads is more like, God's like, what have you done, Adam? Now because you've done this is going to happen. Almost like it's, and I think it is what God decides, but it almost reads like, this is just the consequence of what you have done. And I see the same thing here. It says they bring the unauthorized fire. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them. It doesn't say that like this angered the Lord and God was so mad that he sent fire out to consume them. And another thing that's interesting is that, and we didn't go through this, but in the chapters before where they have this ordination of the priesthood, they bring the offerings, and what happens is fire comes out from the presence of the Lord to consume the offerings. It's like this is what happens. You bring the stuff, and you put it there, and fire comes out from the Lord and consumes it. And now they've brought the wrong thing. You can almost read this as like, really what happened here is like the fire got confused. Don't mishear me on that. I'm not saying that God got confused and burns up Nadab and Abihu because they've done something wrong. And God's like, oh no, now I burned up the wrong thing. But it does sort of have this feeling like this happens because like this is what happens during the sacrifice. And you've got it mixed up. And now what happened is the fire came out and consumed you instead of the sacrifice because you did this wrong. And God shows up to talk to Aaron, and he doesn't say like, oh man, y'all better get in line. See what I did to your other 2 boys? No, God is like, we got to, listen, Aaron, y'all got to pay attention. That's what he says, right? You can't be drinking because you have to be able to pay attention to discern between the holy and the not holy, between the clean and the unclean. This is serious business what you're doing here, and you need to do this so we get it right. It's almost like God is saying, we got to keep this from happening again. Here's what we're going to do, Aaron, to keep this from happening again. Now, it's Moses that is the one that's all like, God's holy, and this has happened because God is holy. Don't you show any grief. Do this the correct way. And then something interesting happens at the end of this book. The end of this chapter. They do something else incorrect on this same day. What do they do that's incorrect? There's a goat. Pretty sure it's a goat, right? Yeah. When Moses inquired, this is verse 16, when Moses inquired about the goat of the sin offering and found that it had been burned up, he was angry with the other two sons. You just did it wrong this morning, and fire comes out and consumes your two brothers, and now you were supposed to eat the goat. I was very clear. You have to eat all of this goat, and the goat, I could just hear myself like scolding my kids. These dishes aren't clean. We told you have to look at the dishes. Maddie's smiling at me because she's heard this before. You can't put up dishes that still have crusty food on them. I just told you this yesterday. This is what Moses is saying. We just had this morning. I told you exactly how to do this, and you haven't done it the right way, and look what happened. And now, right after that's happened, you let the goat burn up. You were supposed to eat the whole goat. And what happens? Aaron's like, do you know what's happened to me today? Do you know what's happened to me? And you're worried about this goat? Do you think God would have been pleased with me? I was so distraught. I could not eat that goat the way I was supposed to eat the goat today. And Moses says, all right, you're right. You couldn't do it. I understand. I've got kids, Moses says, and he gets off his high horse a bit. He says, I understand. You couldn't eat the goat. You're right. If you had eaten the goat, you would have eaten the goat out of spite if you had eaten that goat. And that's not how to eat the goat. That's not what it's there for. You're right. Today, we couldn't do it right. The next time we'll eat the whole goat, okay? But today, it's okay. And so it leaves us with this question of, wait, is the point of this really that if you don't do things exactly the right way, God is going to smite you? Can't be the point of this chapter. Can't it? Because it's got both stories in it. There are two times when they don't do things the right way. First time, fire comes out and consumes the two boys. Second time, okay, it's all right. We'll do better next time. This is a tough one. Any comments so far? I'll give you, because maybe that lodged something loose. It jumped out to you all. There's one of the commandments that I wanted to go into that we didn't go into enough. Let me just find it and read it for you. Let me just find it. Exodus 20, verse 4. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the fathers to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. Wow. What do you hear? Tell me, talk to me. Tell me what you hear when you read that verse.
Disobey and others obey.
Disobey, and your children will pay for it. But what else?
If you serve me as I say, then generations generations after you are going to be blessed.
And yeah, if you disobey, your children are going to be punished for your sin. But if you obey, if you love me and keep my commandments, your children will be blessed. Yeah, we got some numbers in there, though. What numbers do we have? What numbers are in there? See a 3? See 4? Almost sort of like, God's like, all right, if you disobey, I'm going to punish your children. I'm going to do it to 3 or 4 generations. When we studied this as a family, we're like, which is it? Is it 3 or 4? And then, but if you love me and keep my commandments, I will bless how many? 1,000. 1,000. And so God has set up this. I'm going to compare these two numbers, right? My wrath, my punishment, it goes to 3 or 4. We'll talk about that in a second. 3 or 4. My love goes to 1,000. God is both a holy God who punishes evil, and we're going to see that in the Bible. But God is a merciful God who says, I'll walk the blood path for you. Who says, hit me with the stick, nakar me with the stick. He's a God who says, I'll send my son to take on the sin of the world. He says, but these two things, they're not equal. They don't weigh the same. One of them's 3 or 4. The other one's 1,000. We're supposed to put that in perspective. How many generations have there been since this happened? I was trying to calculate it, I've forgotten. So it's roughly 3,500 years. You said 40 years per generation. I think it comes out to like 80. There have been 80 generations since God said this. And he said, my love extends to 1,000. 40,000 years of your children is how far my love extends. But I said these numbers mean something. What does 3 mean? Again, remember? 3 is the community. And we talked about 4 too. What does 4 mean? 4 is the number of the Gentiles. Because if you're an Israelite, the Gentiles are this way and that way and that way and that way. Gentiles are everywhere. 4 cardinal directions. My wrath will extend to the whole community. And we were like, well, wait a minute. So what if your grandfather did something bad, but your father did something good? Or your great-grandfather did something bad? Like, what happens to you? Because now you got both of them. And is it 3 or is it 4? And we were trying to figure this out, right? What God is saying is that my wrath will extend to the whole community. My wrath will extend to the Jewish community and the Gentile community. My wrath will extend. But my love will extend to the whole community of God times 10 times 10. My love is so much bigger than my wrath. He's a righteous God. He's a loving God. One of those is way